So maybe to start out with, I see here from the committee, I see Jean, I see Jason, I see John, I see Adam, I see Brett, I see Giuseppe, I see Kathy Frazier, I see Ken, and the rest of us are staff or observers. So those are kind of as a way of introductions. I think that's who we have on so far. Did I miss anybody? Cool. Jason, I'll turn it over to you to get some minutes approved from our last meeting.
Yep. Hopefully everybody was able to. I unfortunately missed the last meeting, so it's good to be back. And thank you, Jean, for covering in the chair slot. Hopefully everybody was able to read the minutes. And I guess, do we have a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I guess we have a second. We're good here, right? Or do we need to do like all those in favor?
It never hurts. You don't actually, yeah. We're approved.
Okay, we're approved. We got a first and a second. We're good to go.
Okay, I'm going to pull up the presentation. And just so everybody knows, kind of, I know Kirsten included this kind of in the email, but we have a pretty short presentation tonight. It's to update folks on kind of a little bit about what we heard during the comment period, any adjustments that we've kind of made in response to them. And then based on the discussion of the committee at the last meeting, kind of all this, we kind of did the round robin and you all made kind of statements about the project. We kind of captured those in a draft recommendation document. Once we kind of do the presentation, we'll pull up that document and people can kind of edit it. We can edit it, right? And then that'll be the basis for Jason and Jean at the CMC kind of relaying the recommendations of the CAC, what folks want to see kind of moving forward. And again, I know some of you are kind of bouncing here or there from meetings. So if you want to leave anything in the chat, kind of about things you want to make sure that we include, just kind of drop it in as needed. And I do want to check, we have a number ending in it's a 612 and it's ending in 31. If that person can unmute, or if it is a committee member, if you are, just indicate who you are so we can capture you appropriately.
Sophia, can you hear me? It's Kirsten.
Oh, it is Kirsten. Okay, you're listening in through.
I'm doing double duty here. Thank you.
That's the audio on the phone. It's always a good one if it's not coming in clear. Okay, I'm as you can see, I'm a little bit of a chatty Kathy tonight, so I actually need to share said presentation and get us going. And now I need all of you back. Sorry, it always takes 1 minute to kind of get situated with our WebEx. I need to pull back up the chat so I can read said chats from folks as they come in. I know we sometimes get questions. And we'll try to note any new committee members that join us late so that that's recorded as well. So can everybody make it full screen so it's easier to see? Okay, jumping into the presentation a little bit, we already approved minutes. So I know all of you are super aware of all of the process that we've been in over the last year, but it doesn't hurt to get a quick reminder, which is basically we started at this route process in August of 2020, when the Met Council in Hennepin County kind of made the decision that we had to seek a route without using freight rail property. And for those that were here with us from the beginning, which many of you were, it took quite a while to get folks kind of comfortable with moving forward and what that meant and what we were going to look at. And so establishing project goals, talking about the transition and what it means, talking about the commitments that we were going to continue to make to our communities and all that kind of stuff were part of that, a big part of that process. I mean, it took kind of spring, fall not spring, summer, fall of 2020 going into 2021, set us up. We had initial kind of, if you think back in the day, we started out with blobs of project study areas. And then in March, that's when we released the potential routes for consideration. And one of our first questions to communities was, did we get this right? In the sense of, was there anything missing? Was there a better option to explore? Did this feel like the right place to look at light rail? And the map on the screen is obviously one that you're all familiar with, because it's kind of what we narrowed down to and built a lot of information, and then released kind of this draft route modification report in December. And it included a lot of data, but it didn't include our final recommendation for the city of Minneapolis. So you kind of knew where we were going everywhere else, but kind of, we intentionally didn't include a recommendation in that draft, so that if there was kind of things from the community that are biased or things that were important that we weren't including, it gave that opportunity to give feedback on that before we officially set down a path of things, because it's easier to shape while it's as we're developing it versus as a reaction. So that led us to making the recommendation of West Broadway in the route modification report that we talked in great depth about for quite some time at our last meeting. Just for the minutes, I want to recognize that Ellis has also joined us this evening. Sorry for the random side note. And we gathered comments from April 18th to May 27th. And we received over 1,000 comments. I do want to note for folks that while we didn't ask for full demographic information, since this went out far and wide, some of those comments were from corridor residents. Some of them also came from folks other places within the Twin Cities metro. We gathered comments. It was kind of more of an official process, right? So we did, we gathered comments by door knocking and encouraging people to write in. But kind of that 1,000 comments represents those that got motivated to provide an official comment, whether that was in-person meeting or interactive map, an email. An email came in many different forms, or even sharing comments among from many other folks that just kind of captured. And so that's kind of what we're reporting on as well. So what did we hear in these 38 days? Kind of to show you a little bit about how it all breaks down is, if you want to read all 1,000 comments, we included them in the attachment that we sent you all, but just to kind of talk a little bit about, what did we hear specifically? And, some comments do tackle multiple subjects, so we try to kind of break down generally what folks were primarily talking about. And so if you guys remember, we basically asked the community three kind of framing questions to help them with comments. Was, do you agree with the route recommendation? Why or why not? What do you want our policymakers to know as they look to move this project forward? And what do you want the project team to know that would help make this project better as we go into the next stage? So basically, what are the things that you want out of this project? And so comments kind of reflected, not always those three questions, but in a lot of ways. So the general route feedback, support, or opposition is, we also encourage folks like, hey, it can be a lot of work to comment on these official processes. They're kind of scary. So just give us a few word answer, right? Like, what do you want to say? And so we got actually a fair amount of comments that were quite simple. Like, I support West Broadway because it helps me connect to places I want to go. I don't think LRT is something our state should be spending money on. Kind of in the general support or opposition. So that's an example of what falls into that. People asked about funding. What's the budget of the project? How are you going to get your funding? How does all that work? Maybe kind of what funding priorities there are. We had a lot of comments kind of in like roadway design and also pet and bike design. So, people expressing both kind of the wanting safe spaces, right, to walk or bike or cars going fast, but also asking, what kind of in that other bucket of noise, construction, property impacts, and traffic of like, would you increase traffic by my house or things like that. We often hear quite a bit from people immediately adjacent to the light rail or within close proximity. And when I mean immediately adjacent, like you can see the project, right? It is in your front yard, backyard, side yard, down the hill, some version of that. And so those are where we get a lot of tell us more about noise, tell us more about the direct construction impacts, kind of and concern, more of the concerns come here that we hear specifically. One of the things that I really love is if people give us ideas of how they want to be engaged. That's a and I saw Kathy Frazier's comment come up. Did any of these themes come out in other categories? Think so. I'm not quite 100% sure what you're asking, but maybe the way to answer it is we took the comments and we in the comment summary we tied them to the project goals. So as they related to the project goals, we captured them in those places because then we can pull them through. Oh, the other, it's kind of the random bucket of things. Like it really was hard to capture where they would go. Ken, I also see your hand up. Please go ahead. And you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, it takes me a while to find that mute button after I find the raise hand button. So sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, my question is, so kind of Kathy's question reminded me of it, but in the summary of the comments document that you provided us, or that was provided for us, many comments are repeated over and over again in various sections. Are those just repeats, or are they different comments that just happen to be the same? But I noticed there were comments that just were in category after category, and they were the same.
So we did. Do you mean this is the whole? We included at the end of the comment summary every comment that we received. So if you're kind of scrolling through the document, the first couple of pages are our version of the summary. So kind of summarizing, and then it is the verbatim comments themselves. We did get. So there are repeat comments in the sense that we got form letters. So people, from an organization, basically sending in, a template email or something like that. So sometimes they are from we take out personal identifying information in the comments. So it does seem like it's the same thing over and over and over again, but if they're included, they are from different people. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm just, I guess with that explanation, it makes a little more sense to me, but it just shocked me at how many times the same comment, I mean, word for word, was repeated in the different categories all the way through those 17 pages of summary.
Good. Yeah, good. Maybe we'll pull it up later and kind of look at it, but good thing to note, I guess. Jason.
I just had a quick question on the general supporter opposition. So it's like it's a big bucket that's 21%. Does that mean that that's like split 10 and a half, 10 and a half, or like positive is half and negative is half? Or like why can't that get broken out to just show like what is in support or opposition?
Sure. I suppose we could take another kind of look at that and count it that way. We obviously didn't here. I think it's about pretty equal. Um, and the part of maybe the philosophy of why we just kind of captured them together was that it's not a vote, right, in terms of the public comments received. And so it's not necessarily our public comments aren't a full representative sample of the world. So kind of wanting to let folks know kind of the magnitude of comments and topics. But like kind of too, if you really read through the comments, a lot of people had very specific things that they were talking about. And that's really helpful for the project staff because then we can kind of consider our actions and things to focus on, as we move into the future. Because this route recommendation report, it really what we're asking the world is, hey, can we do more work focused on this thing, right? Like this year in this phase is really, hey, can we start these kind of official processes to do more environmental review and additional design work to answer all of these questions. We have this kind of like line on the map with some engineering behind it. And so the project goals help us make decisions, kind of in terms of the recommendation. And the specifics of what people are looking for in the project help us take action. And so that's kind of why we broke things down the way that we did, because it's because there's support and opposition and kind of this entire wheel, right? Like when somebody's writing in about noise, they might be writing in terms of opposition to the project, like, hey, I'm worried that light rail will cause noise by my home, versus somebody that just writes in a line that says, hey, I'm opposed to this project. So it's kind of the other category, and the general support or opposition was just kind of one of our ways to bucket that.
I guess I kind of look at it like you've got design broken out into light rail design and station location and design, road design, bike design. Like that I mean, the way that you're showing route feedback, that would be one large design chunk of the pie, but it's broken out into 4 different percentages of different pieces of design. So it seems to me like support and opposition in for general route feedback, I get that, like you're not going to put each individual like this piece of feedback and that piece of feedback, but like from my perspective, I think just as far as representing what the feedback you're getting, support and opposition are very different things, so it would be helpful to like, get that slice in the same way that you've shown design as like broken out into separate pieces.
Yeah, and I think we can take a look at that and kind of report back a little bit. In some ways, it's hard to, I will caveat that some of the comments, it's hard to know what the person meant. So you're making an interpretation. I'll give you an example. So folks wrote in, we got a bunch of form letters that were about anti-displacement. So the letter reads to the effect of, hey, we actually support this project. We see the benefit of light rail. We just think you should do more anti-displacement work first before you get to this step. So would you categorize that as opposition because it's opposition to this action, or would you categorize it as support because they actually want to see the benefits of light rail? And that's part of why we tried not that we didn't do it that way, right? Is that you can't always tell from the comments, like if you take literally them all, if what they really want to see.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, it's like anti-displacement is a good example because that is a huge focus of the project. I would think like that would be its own chunk unless it's like such a small percentage that it then falls into other, right? Like, so
Yeah,
so are you so does that mean like we're taking that comment and we're breaking it out into like there's general support, but then there's another piece of it that's other that is anti-displacement or like I mean I don't know. I just think it would be more transparent with like what feedback we received when like
that's
the largest chunk is 21% of just like general feedback. And I see where you're coming from. Like I guess I'm not asking you to like telepathically read into each comment, but like again, I feel like support and opposition, it's like that comment would be for support, is support of the project because it's that's what you're saying is like general support. Like they have an issue with anti-displacement, which is a maybe a separate thing, but I feel like that would be support, right?
right. And that's partly why we included every single comment we received in the summary, right? Because we tried to kind of summarize it in a way that's helpful to move us forward. But you can kind of do your own interpretation of what as well as what from what we heard. And I think in future phases too, one of the things that I've really reflected on in this comment period is I know that we get different feedback from different demographics. And because light rail is kind of in the news a lot right now, we also hear from folks that just don't like the direction of Metro Transit overall in terms of the investments that we're making to whether it's BRT or light rail or whatever to improve our system, or have kind of wonder about the Met Council. So we also hear that right in these official processes. And I think it's helpful for committees like yourself, as well as our decision makers, if we collect more. We kind of made the decision to not require demographic information on this official comment period because we wanted people to comment and not have barriers. But I'm reflecting that I think in the future we will basically for sure ask for like zip codes and um, uh, some of the standard questions that Metro Transit likes to ask. But I think it helps get to kind of Jason the root of what you're getting at is, well, we might be hearing different things from Robbinsdale than we are from Minneapolis, or we might be hearing different things from residents than we are from business owners, or we might be hearing different things from transit riders versus non-transit riders. And how can we display that in a way to you that actually makes this information useful, what community sentiment is? So I think that there's some lessons learned in this in conversations I've had with folks as we kind of walk through some of the comment summaries that we can for sure take forward. I've had some reflection myself in reviewing all of this and kind of what folks have asked for, kind of a little bit, because I can't pull out what Robbinsdale. I can guess, right, who's commenting from Robbinsdale, or I could look at the interactive map and note who commented in Robbinsdale or indicated a Robbinsdale address, but I couldn't from the comments give you, exact tallies, and we probably should have done that. So that's just some reflection on my part.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to me like that's the purpose of this slide or this pie chart. So it's not so much like I'm not necessarily asking about like different communities and what their feedback was. Like maybe in general, that would be a good thing to have just to reflect on the project in the comments. But for this specific slide, I think it's really helpful to get a sense. And I mean, you kind of said it, because you had already said that it's pretty even between positive and negative. So it would just be good to show that as part of this slide.
We'll see what we can do before CMC. So I have Kathy and then Ken and then Jean.
Hi, everyone. So I'm not opposed to the way the comments are categorized. But what I do think is that from an overall project perspective, given the level of community engagement, it will be helpful for us to highlight, a percentage of the population that, based on our input, the input that we receive, supports this. I think it helps with buy-in from the community. that this is a project that is supported. So that's kind of where I was going with this.
Thank you for that, Kathy. And ways, you know, and one of the things I think we struggle with too, especially in official comment periods, is those that are happy with what we have put forward, you know, often are just like, okay, cool, right? Where those that are more concerned want to influence the process more. And so I always really look for feedback from this committee about your networks of people that you know that support the work that we're doing, and how we motivate capturing more of that. So as we kind of think about well, we're going to go through this process, but I would like that to potentially be a future topic, especially as we go into kind of the next phase of work. Ken.
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that I kind of ended up figuring out what makes best sense with this kind of information that we have is I framed it in my mind as number one, the number of comments. That was really important because that's going to give us how many people are really engaged enough to want to respond with an opinion. But what helped me the most was understanding that the value of this information is finding out where the public is or where a block of people are so that project staff can really focus on those areas to either educate, to bring more programming, to answer those concerns or questions, and really kind of, I don't want to say turn someone's mind, but I think a lot of the comments that were made are based on where people are coming from. They don't know as much as some of us know about the project and about some of the issues we've been dealing with. So those are very natural concerns, but it really helps the project staff understand where their work needs to more focus on within the community. Is that a fair way of
Yeah. Yeah, Ken, I 110% basically agree with that statement, because overall what the project staff is trying to do is, you know, you will always have controversy, right? We can't make the world, you know, somebody will not be happy with a decision that we make, even, you know, two neighbors right next to each other. But we are trying to work towards consensus. We're trying to add things that people basically like about the project. You know, and there's often things that we can do to really improve communities, and knowing that helps us basically shape things. We also want people to feel empowered to influence our process. And, you know, we've kind of been in this 18-month process where things are in a lot of different places. And it's been we've kind of been asking almost a quarter wide question, which is, hey, is this the right route? Obviously, it's specific to communities, but as we get more into the design and environmental work, basically in our next 2 to 4 years of work, a lot of that gets very community specific, and the questions get very localized. And I would for sure reflect that when myself and my staff talk to folks, there's a lot of fear. And that fear generates a lot of the comments, and a lot of the concerns, right? And partly because staff's at a place where we can answer a lot, but we also can't. And it sounds weird to be like, well, moving forward helps the process, but it sometimes we need to do more work to really make to have meaningful conversations. And in a lot of ways, I feel that's where we are, is that from all these comments, we kind of know areas that, and we'll get into this a little bit too, because we're taking some actions to look at some areas a little bit more based on project feedback. Nick will kind of go into some of that. But yeah, that is, I think that is really the intention of kind of how we sort through the comments. It's kind of we're trying to figure out two things. Do we have to adjust anything that we're doing now in this route recommendation to be responsive to themes, new information, things that we really need to consider from the community going forward? And based on all of this, a lot of people gave forward-thinking comments. How do we divide our work and think about our environmental process and what we need to answer through design to kind of set our work plan up for the next year? There's the kind of the formal steps, but that's the I'm kind of rambling now, but that's the lens that the project staff definitely takes.
Thank you.
Jean, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, wrong button. If you took safety, public engagement, and ped bike design, you're looking at about 17%. If you took those three areas and put them as concerns, that brings up the same question about what is a concern and what is the general support of opposition. Very key points about safety, engagement, and design. And as community engagement committee members that represent our communities, knowing exactly or even close of who are for and who are against in that 21%, I think is pretty critical because it helps us to formulate with you how we're going to educate and communicate what this project is for our community. And by having a gray box that isn't specific, you've got the data. Show the data. That's all I'm saying. You know, I agree. There's a lot of concern. We don't have answers yet. It isn't on paper. We're still working on it. It'll take years. But as closer we get to that point where we have a design and we can start answering questions, meanwhile, we can work on those that are either for or against this to keep them educated. So when we do have firm plans, we can get, a consensus. So you talked about, you want to know what people like about the project for consensus. Well, not everybody's going to like it, but if we can get them to maybe come along with it, even though they don't like it, by educating them, I think that's why that slide of 21% needs to be adjusted.
Understood. And maybe, since I can't do it right now, maybe just kind of getting in a little bit into some examples of what we heard and whatnot, and feel free to peruse all the comments as well. We can spend some time on that as well. But since we're asking so much about the general support of or opposition, to kind of break that down a little bit, we didn't put numbers to it, but to kind of talk about where people were going with this comment. Is that in the general support, people were writing in about improvements to basically the blue line overall, like people saying we like 2.0 better than 1.0. Like you serving West Broadway is an improvement. Serves people, places, serves people that need transit the most. A little bit even, I didn't include it in the slide right here, but folks talking about kind of how it would benefit them personally in terms of riding, and a good amount of the general opposition fell into, I kind of already said this, but a little bit of just I don't approve the recommended route, might be just as simple as that, and then a lot of comments around that they're looking at our region and wondering if we can deliver another light rail project on time and budget and what that means. And so kind of challenging us a little bit on that. People got a lot, kind of in the kind of a concern, kind of a suggestion. They kind of come both ways, is looking at parking, especially on street, especially where we're changing it, and wanting to have more discussions about that. We've talked in Minneapolis about district parking, things like that. And the the request land, and this is corridor wide, is that there's often folks writing in about a desire for landscaping. So kind of talking about we'd like to see more green in your design. Could you we get comments like folks talking about like the tracks themselves and how our infrastructure could be green. Lot of comments about kind of traffic, right? Whether you're on 81 or on West Broadway, right? How can you make that feeling of being next to traffic better? Safe and easy access to destinations along the route, especially for those that are walking, rolling, or biking. And again, throughout the corridor. And a question for Adam: will there still be parking on Broadway from Lyndale to Penn? Basically, no. So the parking on West Broadway is basically being eliminated for the LRT, and so that's part of the conversation. Okay, and then where we hear a lot of the concerns, so people maybe on the opposed side or the I need more information to feel comfortable with what you're doing, they are writing about noise, traffic, environmental concerns, or the impact of construction or thereafter. Obviously, safety is when we hear about kind of ongoing, and then from our transit riders, really wanting the LRT goes fast. You can get around the region fast, so wanting something that provides a good travel time and is competitive. Wanting additional engagement, I think that's been a theme overall. And then a desire for the anti-displacement commitments to kind of come as soon as possible. That's a flavor of what we heard. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Nick now to talk about what we're doing with all of this and kind of how the recommendation still stands.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Nick Landwehr. I'm with the engineering design of the project office, and I just want to, as Sophia said, just want to recap a little bit of where we're at. So the map you see here is the staff recommended route, which included West Broadway on it. For the report, this was released in April, on April 18th. We've gone through the comment period now, and so this is the culmination of the comments and kind of putting a cap on the staff recommendations. So again, our recommendation was the West Broadway route option. So as we start up on the north end in Brooklyn Park, as folks should recall, if you're not out, we'll get you up to speed. Up in Oak Grove, that section through on West Broadway in Brooklyn Park remains pretty much the same as it was in, as we would call it, BLRT 1.0. We were on West Broadway, not affected by the railroad corridor, able to keep that design that was at pretty much 90%, maintain the 4 station locations along that alignment. As we get down south of Brooklyn Boulevard by Highway 610, we start getting on County Road 81. That's where we shifted from the freight rail alignment over to County Road 81 between Brooklyn Boulevard, or between 71st area and basically North Memorial Lowry Avenue area. We follow along on County Road 81 with maintaining a station location at 63rd, although now in the roadway, in the county roadway, a station at Bass Lake Road. As we move farther south, we get down into Robbinsdale, and this is where we start deviating a little bit more from that freight rail corridor. We have identified a station location that downtown Robbinsdale area that we'll need to keep working with the city and the community on narrowing down the location of where that station would go and how it would fit in, as well as the opportunity station with this alignment at the North Memorial Lowry Avenue area. We should start calling this station area, I believe, Lowry. We'll have a better name for it, but we'll start calling it Lowry Station in this area to geographically identify it a bit better. But this one would serve that neighborhood along Lowry, where County Road 81 comes together, and North Memorial Hospital. Now we start getting down into Minneapolis, and we follow West Broadway south from North Memorial. So it takes us down to the Penn Avenue area, where we're studying how a station fits in that area. and then following West Broadway along over to Lindale, as shown here, with some options here, potentially using 21st for an option to either handle light rail or roadway or both in that location, and also identifying that as a station area along Emerson Fremont that would have connections or robust connection to the D line in that location. As we start going a little bit farther south between West Broadway and downtown Minneapolis, the route that we've identified, had identified in the report, is Lindale Avenue down to crossing I-94 and over to Target Field Station. But one of the things we'll discuss here, I see Jason, you got your hand up.
Going back on the just on the route.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like so now we're going down West Broadway through Robbinsdale, obviously Penn and all of that. That's like the same route that the 14 bus travels right now. Do you have any, like, do you envision that the 14 goes away once light rail is in place?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, Jason, because as we start looking at how the Route 14 services, where the stops are they duplicative or are they compatible with each other? We will evaluate it as we get closer, more when we get into construction. We'll look at service planning and how things operate. But we want to build it more robust and not take away service if it's serving something else. So there are routes, for instance, what is it? The route was it 19 along University Avenue, where we run
16.
or 16, sorry, not 19, 16 along University Avenue, where we put light rail in there. Well, the stations are about a half a mile apart there, where the 16 stops quite frequently in there. So that service was maintained along University and is compatible with the light rail in that
Where
area.
the 50 got basically was a duplicate of what the light rail is doing on University. So what kind of like what Nick was going to is, we will do a comprehensive service plan before we open light rail. And so that includes, like, for example, I know Kathy's on the call, and one of the conversations with Brooklyn Park is also kind of not north-south, east-west connections.
East-west connections, yeah.
So
there are currently buses on University, even though there's light rail on that corridor?
Yes, there is. Yes.
Cool. Okay, great. And then can I ask one other quick question just on that, like,
sure,
the one turn south of Penn going into Emerson and Fremont, where like the Capri Theater is? Yes. I feel like in all the maps, like, I never really noticed any takes, but like when I drive through there, I'm just curious, like, how do we fit through there? There's no takes in that, right?
It depends on the alignment there, Jason. So that's where we'll work with the community and station placement, and really even turn lanes and lane geometry through there of how we can mitigate, eliminate, or take care of any impacts. So there's a potential that there are some takes in that area, but it depends on how we get through the intersection. So.
And this gets to Brett, or I think it was Brett's comment earlier, or no, it was Adam's comment. In the map too, we're going to be evaluating whether we're on 21st or West Broadway for a part of that segment. So that also changes what potential properties would be impacted, and if there's parking on West Broadway in that segment or not. So that is, we have an overall route. There's a lot of details to still be worked out within the route itself.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, and a lot of work as we're going into construction, i.e. that is a great question on buses, and we focus specifically on the route along 81, but as Sophia said, we'll look at those robust connections that Brooklyn Park is interested in beefing up the east-west connections here, and this is where this spine makes it more convenient to start building on the system and making those connections. All right. Next slide.
So bus service to come. Yeah. Another question to be answered in the future.
So some of the feedback we've heard during this public comment period, the staff is recommending that we continue with the recommended route, but that based on feedback that we've heard and from a council resolution from Minneapolis, that we continue to reevaluate some options from that route between downtown and West Broadway. So continue to look at that Lindale Avenue connection, but are there any other viable options or good options there in lieu of Lindale? So we'll bring those up, look at that, and evaluate those all together. And the other one is the other comment that we've had is to keep conducting our anti-displacement work and environmental documentation at the same time. So, you know, we've had, as Sophia said, some citizens contacted the project and officials saying, hey, you know, hold on with the project here until we can get anti-displacement initiatives in place. But we feel that this is the time to be working on the anti-displacement issues, and as we're identifying what those potential impacts could be, and come up with the potential remedies for those and mitigation for it. So that is how we are proposing to move forward with the report and the next steps for the project. So again, this is a great slide to bring up because a lot of people say, okay, you guys are done with your recommendation, it's ready to go. We're a long ways from it. You can see in the blue with the little arrow up on top, we are here. You can see throughout the process, we want to continue to keep our very robust community engagement process and keep the community close for input, to let them know where we're at in design and what we're looking at, and keep those conversations going. But this going forward now is I think Sophia, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Sophia said, you know, this is really just kind of us going to our to leadership based on comments back from the public to get permission to keep going, to keep evaluating the project moving forward. So our next steps are to go into our environmental process, that's in green. So that's the next 18 to 24 months. To review, document the benefits and the impacts of the project, to figure out what those mitigations are for that, and avoidances or mitigations. Municipal consent will come along with part of this project. So, you know, roughly about a year from now, when we're at more of a 30% design, we're more informed with our environmental work. We will be seeking support from our partner cities along the alignment and hope to secure municipal consent. We'll also begin the engineering phase of this. Now, the engineering is going to need to inform the environmental, but the environmental needs to kind of guide the engineering also, so they go hand in hand together. So during that engineering, we're going to start identifying the locations of stations. We'll look at how we make those ped and bike connections and how we, you know, robustly access stations and do that station area planning. You know, not just what happens at the station, but work with our project partners on what happens around the stations. From there, then we get into engineering. So that's another 1.5 to 2 years of work where we really start to dive in, develop our construction ready plans, and prepare the community for what construction is going to be, work on coordinating how we can limit those impacts from construction, and still continue with that station area planning. And then we finally get to construction. So in the orange there, we show construction. You know, the earliest time frame is probably going to be 2025, the year 2025, and we expect construction to last a duration of 3 to 4 years. Now, we should make it clear. A lot of times people think, oh, you're going to start construction, I'm going to have to put up with 3-4 years of it. Well, you know, along that 13 miles of alignment, we would be doing construction, but we want to try to limit the impacts in certain areas as much as we can. So, you know, the full civil construction, you know, in front of a certain area, you know, more likely on average would be about a season of construction. So it's not 4 years of construction. We've got your street ripped up. It would probably be out in front of an area for about a season of that. Our final goal is to be open for revenue service in 2028. So Sophia, you had a.
I was going to note for the committee that we're also adding kind of the anti-displacement timeline a little bit to this graphic. It just was not ready in time for your meeting, but you'll see that update from us kind of in the next round of things. Date specific things. You can only work so fast, right, folks? So I just wanted to plug that before getting Nick to his next slide.
Yeah. So what's next? Again, I brought up the environmental phases is where we would move to after hopefully we get actions from our Hennepin County, an adoption from the Corridor Management Committee based on recommendations from this committee, and then that would go to Hennepin County and Met Council for actions to recommend that we move forward with the project. So we start the environmental review phase where we document the impacts of the alternatives that we're studying, and we look at ways to again avoid impacts, to minimize them if we can with our design and how we manage it, or to mitigate for those impacts if we can't design around those. And specific examples of what we're looking at during the environmental phase are noise and vibration, visual impacts, the property impacts, if it's physically property or buildings themselves, impacts to parks, soil, water, those more environmental that you think of, safety impacts and transportation. How do we design the safest route we can and make sure that we're evaluating it? And some of the other things out there is historical impacts. How do we mitigate for and avoid those? We're going to further develop our designs here as we're moving forward, begin starting to focus in on where those stations are placed, as I said before. Make sure that we're paying key focus on safety of the customers and for the surrounding community, to make sure that we have safe access with sidewalks, pedestrian and bikeways for people that are walking and rolling to the station, and making sure we have robust connections to those areas. And then, as always, we're committed to ongoing public engagement, making sure that we're staying out in front of the public and having the dialogue and listening to what they have to say and letting and helping inform them where we're at with the process.
And to build on that a little bit, and I think Ken teed me off for this a little bit earlier in the discussion of how we kind of categorize our public engagement, like what we heard from people. The staff really took a look at, is this question something that needed to be addressed for us to select a route? Or is this a question that we actually need to get to these next steps to be able to answer? In a lot of cases, it's the latter, right? I can't answer somebody right now about whether they'll have a noise impact until we do our environmental work. I can't even fully answer what all the property impacts are going to be until Nick does more design work. I can't have a full conversation about what safe pedestrian connections are and community cohesion until we are able to do that design work. And so part of the method of the madness and how we represent stuff to you is in this like crazy context of us thinking about the overall development of the project and the future check-ins that we have with community to basically say, is this project on track? Is this what we should be delivering for our communities? And municipal consent kind of sometime in 2023, as well as this very formal environmental process will really lead us there in a lot of ways. Because at this point, there's a lot of things that we're hearing. I can't continue the conversation until somebody says I can do that work, and that requires this action that we're in now. I think it was Ken, maybe it was even Jean a little bit who teed me up for that, right? It's like, why are we showing the things that we are? And part of it is to answer that. And that's partly why, for example, with the area around Lindale, right? The question is actually, is this the right street, right? And we're like, okay, there's some questions about where folks want to get and how all that works. We can continue to evaluate that. That's still a slight question at hand. Whereas, can this be a safe pedestrian connection until we move forward? That's the next phase, right? So that's partly why we show things the way we do. And the project team is feeling a lot of ways is we're at this point where if we have a project, we definitely know our route, and we have to go from there. So with that, it was a very short presentation. We can pull up, or you have with you more of the comments. But I think, Chair, if we're ready, what we want to move into is just discussion from the committee about where we are, and then reactions to the initial kind of staff document that we put together that tried to capture the last meeting that occurred from the CAC. So I will stop sharing the presentation and pull up that document, but just kind of turn the floor over for folks that have any initial things they want to say. Oh no, never mind. Nothing new in chat. Sorry, it takes me a minute to switch things over.
Well, Sophia's pulling that up. Does anybody have any comments that they want to make? I mean, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the document. Ken, be great to hear from you.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to share with the group that that came to my mind as Sophia was just summarizing a little bit. You know, one of the other things that stood out to me in the summary comments was there were quite a few comments on the perception of safety in and on light rail and buses. And one thing I heard, so I mean, that's pretty clear that there is a strong element of safety concerns, and some of the negative comments were about Met Council or Metro Transit needs to improve safety perceptions on buses and light rail before anything else happens. And so I heard at an earlier meeting, Met Council meeting today, a report from the chief of staff and one of the council members who are doing a task force on public safety, and they're reviewing all the public safety processes that Metro Transit uses on light rail and buses, and making some recommendations on how to improve the perception of safety, including the hiring of more staff related to having a presence on stations and on buses and on trains. So that's a very active target right now. There's a lot of focus being put on public safety. And as we progress through the next 6-9 months, a year, whatever it takes to roll out those recommendations to improve safety, that's a moving target. So, you know, right now there's comments related to safety on the light rail, blue line extension, but we're not able to do much about that except let the programs roll out that are currently being worked on. So everything's dynamic, everything's moving. So there are certain things that are in place now that are really important for the blue line extension, but important for the whole line that's taking place as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. And I think that was just an eye opener for me today to experience that after reading the comments about so much concern about the public image of safety on the light rail. So it's not just the Blue Line Extension team working on these issues, but they extend quite deep into the whole process.
Thank you for that, Ken. And I don't know if we have full time. Sorry, but anybody can hear my dog squeaky toy. Sorry, dog distracted me. The safety is really one of Metro Transit's main priorities. And I want to give a major shout out to both my boss, Leslie Kandaris, our chief of staff, who's spearheading many of these efforts, as well as a member of my team, Pam Steffen, who is in our customer relations and is really working to improve the customer experience throughout our system. So that they did a wonderful presentation today that Ken's referring to, that maybe we can send a link to folks who also would want to be watching it, because it is really a multifaceted recommendation from a lot of ideas of what we can try in terms of Metro Transit to what a lot of what Ken laid out. So ongoing, but that is very true, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, Ken. So we have the committee, essentially what Jean and I are going to present to the CMC. And I guess this is based off of the conversation from last time. So I looked at the notes and I watched our video from last time. And I guess it seems pretty consistent with what we talked about. Does anyone have any comments on, I guess one question is just, like, are we allowed, is this discussion to like add and change things if we feel necessary? Or is this just for you to get feedback on what we think?
No, I'm ready to live edit anything the committee wants to kind of add or change to their recommendation.
So it's really important that if we have feedback on this, that we share it now, because that CMC meeting is next week and we're going to present what's on this document. So if there's any feedback, I mean, if this is everyone happy with this, or it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of people commenting yet?
And it was one of the attachments. It's titled CAC recommendation draft for anybody that wants to pull it up. And I don't know if everybody had a chance to kind of peruse it beforehand. I mean, if we hit the mark, we hit the mark, folks. If there's things that the conversation last time was framed around just kind of how everybody's feeling. I shouldn't say that. It's kind of framed around the information on the report. If there's any forward-thinking things that the committee does want to include, for those that can't see, it's Alice just wrote in chat, I think it's a pretty solid representation of what we've been talking about, but now I'm looking for a comment.
So Adam, do you want me to read that?
Sure, go ahead, Jason.
Okay. So Adam said, with all of these concerns of parking, ped crossings, traffic flow, congested roadway, bicycle space, is there still no interest in looking at raising the tracks between Lindale and Lowry Stop? So I don't know, do we want to include that in our recommendation to the CMC as far as, I mean, it's not really, we're not giving like specific, I guess maybe design consideration.
Yeah, we could say something along the lines of some committee members would still like to see an evaluation of elevated track options along the route.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've definitely heard that feedback.
Hi, it's Ellis. If I was gonna pick nits, maybe we could throw something in the design considerations about just like we have consider connections to parks, maybe just consider connections to the local trails, commercial areas, things that we think will kind of like spur ridership and success. It's a pretty minor nit.
A good comment, Ellis. Thank you. And thanks, Adam, for the suggestion as well.
Sorry if my typing's loud. I also have a puppy dog that's destroying his bed in front of me. So he gets to destroy his bed because I can't be I'm focused. Ellis, did that capture it?
Yeah, I think that works. Thank you.
What else, folks? Feeling good?
Any other comments out there? Oh, another comment from Adam. I know there is budget concerns, but with no official budget, it's hard to compare apples to no other option. Along with the infrastructure money being spent at the national level, there seems to be a chance to reconsider. Yeah, and I was going to say there's nothing in this document about like anti-displacement, which I know has been kind of a big piece of what we've been doing. So maybe bringing that up in this.
Committee like to just express their support for work and funding to support anti-displacement efforts. I think that might be.
Yeah, continued efforts on anti-displacement. Like, I think the biggest theme of anti-displacement in this group has just been that, like, regardless of where we're at in the design or the engineering or any of those things, that like we need to, the environmental work, all of those things, like we need to make sure that we keep the anti-displacement piece front and center and keep working on that, like to be ahead of the curve instead of like waiting until things are complete and then address. So I think that's like, I don't, I wasn't part of the specific conversation, but I feel like that should be communicated because I know that's a lot of the conversations we've had in this group.
I'm trying to paraphrase you, Jason. Committee wants to see continued commitment to keep anti-displacement efforts the focus.
I would say effort throughout the development life cycle, because we need it through initial support as well as, after this project to support our business and residents.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah. Got a thumbs up from Ellis, so that's good.
Is it firm enough? The committee wants to see continued commitment to keep anti-displacement efforts throughout the development of the life cycle of the project. Good. That captures it.
Yeah. Since we're overall making a recommendation, Adam's comment about like the comparison between like budgets and no build, do you want me to like include that as like a comment, as like there are some reservations from the CAC based on feedback, or that overall we're supporting this in this statement, or do we include that in this document?
Let me maybe clarify from Adam. I think I interpreted why he was saying that to mean that maybe we can afford some elevated options, but without a budget, that can't be fully evaluated at this time. Did I read you right, Adam? Some kind of thumbs up or response in chat?
I'm sorry, I'm in 2 meetings at the same time. That one's over. I can finally talk. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know there's design considerations. I know there's budgetary restraints, raising elevated. I know there's other constraints, but when we are spending gobs and gobs of money on the Green Line expansion and seem to have no end in sight on spending money there, it's hard to stomach the talking point that we can't afford to explore options in this space and not get any public interaction on that major design component, but we're okay with doing tons of raised flyovers, things like that in a more wealthy part of town. It's just hard to stomach that topic.
And
Good clarification. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, just for the record too, I mean, we have gone that it's more expensive, but if it's really solving a problem, it's not necessarily off the table. And we do have places that we do elevate it where we have design challenges, like by North Memorial. So maybe I can rephrase this in something along the lines of some committee members would like to see continued study of elevated options along the route when the budget is considered, the full budget.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in Seattle a few months ago, and they have a significant portion of their monorail is raised, and it alleviates a ton of the issues that are in the pie chart. I mean, probably 3/4 of them. So
And I also I know you're very passionate about the elevated, but one thing to plug is that we do need to make this project cost competitive, and so that's really what the budget will kind of lean onto. And a lot of times it might be if we spend a lot on structures, it might make it harder for us to do some of the other things that we want to do. And that's part of why we're kind of that argument of, well, it might not be, it's a lot of money for not a lot of benefit, and that's why we lean into we have structures where it really helps solve a problem, or kind of makes the route better. And so don't want folks to think that we're not including it because we're that we want to spend more on a different community. It's kind of managing the overall budget. So I think that's a good thing to kind of include for staff, right? Is as you look at your budget, is are we I also interpret, Adam, your comments as like make this line equitable, right? Like as you, and maybe we should put that into the design considerations is
I just see that there's a huge push right now to re-sew the Rondo neighborhood together. That's been cut apart by a civil project, right? Highways are not lay rail. I'm not strictly comparing the two, but this is going to be a heavy duty civil project right down the city of probably, I would argue, one of the most BIPOC communities in our city or area. And there should be at least some consideration or public comment on, hey, if the budget allowed, would you like to see it elevated? Here's 3 or 4 different proposed views of it. We saw one view that was precast deck that covered the entire road. Yeah, that's not going to be aesthetically pleasing. That's one design option.
So the other members of the committee have talked about similar kind of equity parity issues.
Yeah.
So I added a bullet, and this is kind of reaction for the whole, make design decisions considering regional equity in what should be invested in underinvested communities.
Sure. That's good. Thank you for that.
And sorry, I misconstrued your comment because there's been a lot of discussion in Robbinsdale about the build option versus no build, which is totally different than what you were talking about. So I apologize. That's my bad. I brought my
You're good.
bias.
All the problems along the Broadway portion of it, the North Minneapolis Broadway portion of it. Everything I hear when we go to community stuff and when we talk about it, someone brings up elevated, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And this is
for sure a champion of elevated. I think Ken was trying to jump in.
Yeah, so this is Ken. I just, I want to leave all the options on the table, but I just want to caveat a comment here that elevated always has a negative effect on the disability community. Vertical transportation or getting from one level to the other is going to be dependent on elevators. And we have examples in our light rail system where we have elevated parts of the LRT that rely on elevators that are constantly out of repair or not working. And that causes an issue. So I just want to just put that caveat. I don't want to derail the comment going in as a recommendation, but I just want people to hear the other side. That's a constant concern that I hear about elevated issues.
So if the committee thinks it's fair, I added in the comment a reflection of both the desire for some committee members to see elevated options considered, as well as Ken's statement that Ken I added where other committee members are concerned about the impact to the disability community, and that's tied to the desire to see elevated studied further.
That's fair.
It's a consensus document, right? We're figuring it all out, representing all the views of this committee. I know Brett was popping between meetings, and he was maybe going to come back, but I don't see him back. Anybody that hasn't had a chance to fully weigh in, is there anything else that you want to see in this document?
I don't know if it needs to be included in the document, but I would like to have a conversation with the group just around the idea of, like how much traffic and travel has changed around the Twin Cities. Like if we want to take any consideration into that of like studies or just a new look at the dynamics of like how people move in the Twin Cities, because it's like way different than when we started this project. And I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't like include it as a comment to the group, like for a discussion. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be included in this document if everyone is like, that's not a necessary thing, but I'm curious what the CAC thinks and what we've heard as feedback. I know where I'm at and in Robbinsdale, people bring that up all the time, but I'm just wondering like what the rest of the CAC thinks.
I guess, Jason, we are reevaluating doing traffic counts again along the entire alignment just to verify where things are at compared to where they were pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. To set that, and then looking at national modeling, how they've taken a look at it. What we are seeing though, as some of our traffic counts we just did in May, some of that traffic is coming back now. So, we're finding in locations along the corridor, it's about the same as it was in 2018. So, maybe the distribution's changed a little bit. So, we're finding that there's not the key AM and PM spikes anymore, but throughout the day, traffic's becoming more consistent or more regular.
And I'd say that's the same with our ridership. I mean, Metro Transit has been basically comprehensively looking at what people are doing within our system and has a lot of data. And we're also, some changes in how AM and PM work in our express service, but definitely continuing to see return to our service.
It's something we can definitely put down, Jason, but it is something that we are doing. We are doing that evaluation and study.
Yeah, no, I'm more asking I mean, that's good feedback and thank you. I'm just asking like other CAC members who are talking to their communities, is that something that comes up and like I said, I don't know that it necessarily needs to be included in this document. It's more of like, if everybody's hearing that, then it probably should be in there. If like no one else is hearing it and it's just me, then we'll leave it out.
Maybe Ellis, he has his hand up. He might be responding to you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's a bad point to bring it up because people do. I have heard the same thing, Jason, where they do mention that. Personally, just one CAC member. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to get more data, obviously, but and we have the resources to do so. But I mean, like the seismic shift that would have to occur for this to not be a good transit route. You know what I mean? Like if at the end of the day, if cars were still taking the route, I think it's a viable thing to do. So I don't have any concerns about the long-term viability based on changing commuting trends and things like that nature. I think the trends would have to change so drastically. It's not something that we need to be including. Just my take.
Yeah, and I guess I don't say it in as much as like this is going to change the route or change the plans or anything. More of like understanding like what those needs are. Like it just
that's
seems
a good
like
point.
it has
including it just to we addressed it type of thing.
Right, like that that's feedback that I'm hearing from the community that like there has been this like seismic shift. And yes, I will say there's probably a lot of those people that are like, we don't want this and we don't need it because of those changes in travel.
Yeah.
But I mean, just me personally, I'm someone who for 10 years took a bus downtown 5 days a week. and I have, I've taken a bus once in 2.5 years, and so it's, I think it is like a legitimate, how much is that shift? Just interesting to know so that it can be like answered. And it
No, I
sounds like
think
we're doing studies, and so that's good.
I
So
don't think
what's
it's a bad, like I said, I don't think it's a bad point to bring up. And I'm actually probably colored because I started a new job this week and I've been driving downtown because I don't have my bike set up yet. And I'm like, oh my God, there is so much traffic, So I'm probably colored on that. But yeah.
So just
I'll
a
mute. But yeah, it's
perspective.
a good point.
I hear
Just
Adam,
one,
and then I think I hear Ken as well.
just a perspective thing. I'm not 100% as worried. We should care about the like people going to and from work, but I'm totally okay with building a light rail that people predominantly use to get to the grocery store, to get to the hospital, to college, to school, to parks. I'm okay with that. It doesn't hurt my feelings if less commuters take it and more, for leisure use or for day-to-day use, people take it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a really good point.
Ken, were you trying to jump in? Maybe not. I saw his your bubble kind of do the
Can you
thing.
hear me now?
Yes, I can
Yeah,
hear
we can
you.
hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. My button is really being weird today. One comment that sticks out in my mind related to this kind of conversation is the fact that this is a part of the regional transportation system. And again, whether you use it to commute back and forth every day for a job, there are other uses that are as important as a commuter would use this particular route. So I think the point you're making is a good one, and one that needs to be included for all those reasons.
So maybe taking the comments from the trying to capture what everybody just said under transit needs, something along the lines of, so we have first bullet is kind of transit needs, and it responded to a comment people made about Lowry last time, but we could also add continue to look at travel patterns to make sure this line is helping serve those that are connecting regionally as well as locally. Is that a good way to capture the conversation?
Yeah, I think so. Like further research into or additional study along, that. Yeah, you said it better than I can, but
Yeah, and I think the fact of the matter is we are living in a period of transition because of the pandemic. It drastically changed the way we normally did things, and we haven't finalized out yet to come to an end conclusion. We're still in this transition, so just being aware, having a recommendation related to being aware of this transition of how we use and how we get from one place to the other needs to be a part of the discussion so that it can allay fears of the public that we're ignoring that.
maybe instead of just saying ridership, like could we say like further study of transportation to ensure this line? Because it's kind of like the whole kit and caboodle. Like if people are taking their car to go to the park,
Right.
that's like not ridership per se. But yeah, I think that's good. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
And maybe to kind of maybe transportation is a better word because it's both traffic, but also and maybe Ellis kind of touched on this, right? It's also the bikers, the walkers, the connections
Right.
to things
Yeah.
that basically make this line super viable for folks. And I have a little bit of we added a little bit of that in the below in terms of where did I add that? I feel like I wrote a line. Consider connections to park, local trails, and commercial areas to help with ridership. So we have some of that captured. I don't know. So transportation maybe kind of kind of is that overall encompassing. So we want to make sure that that whole picture is considered.
Yeah, well, and that also goes to Adam's comment about like, you know, it doesn't matter if they're going to work in a commute or if they're going to the baseball game or to a park or to community college or whatever. It's like if people are going from point A to point B and utilizing light rail, that's like what we're going for.
Maybe I should add consider riders that are traveling for employment, school, and daily needs. Sure. Okay.
Makes sense.
And I added a period, but I don't have periods on the bullets. Oh no. Okay, I'll fix how I represent it. Maybe it's a sub bullet. It's a sub bullet. It is a sub bullet. That's what we'll do. Okay.
You can really spot someone that likes making charts and doing the bullet points thing. Little formatting fun there. Sorry.
I am one that cares about the consistency. Yes.
We made a sub point, so you know, we can call this a success.
Is that a colon or a period?
I would have a discussion with you about that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a comment, and it doesn't have to go on this paper, but from a marketing and advertising point of view, when all this is said and done, I think mass transit should have the responsibility to say all that we just said so more people could use it for ridership. Because to build it and say they're going to come, well, it worked in a baseball movie, but not for this. So I think when all this is done, transit should really consider marketing ways to use this to the benefit of everybody, just like what Ken said and what Jason said. But in this document, it's not going to do much, but it's something for you guys to consider, because if you build it and think you're going to come, it's going to take a little more than that. Okay.
Maybe we want to get a little further down the line.
Yeah,
I will
further down
invite
the line,
our marketing director to this meeting to start engaging you all in this conversation a little bit more.
Okay.
But no, Jean, really good point. You know, Metro Transit selling its service, right? And how we talk about what we provide is super important, and letting folks know that it's available, and getting them over the hump to use it the first time, and make it a habit, right? Like how much of our daily lives are on autopilot, right? Getting somebody to consider a change and maybe use transit instead. All things that you can't take for granted.
One thing that I think is missing from the marketing conversation is climate change and climate effect. Every time we jump in a car that doesn't help our climate, and using public transportation really can help in that arena. And I don't think we capitalize on that enough, especially in this particular area where we're having more severe tornadoes, we're having more severe weather, we're having more severe effects of climate change that we're experiencing ourselves every day, and the cost of gas alone. I think publicizing on that fact alone to give this kind of more of give it a second thought is something that we're missing.
So I'm adding a section maybe that I'm going to call future communications. And right now, so I added a heading, future communications, and then I have a bullet that says discuss the benefits of projects like these on climate change. And to Jean's point, I can add consider marketing that helps people use transit. Is that right? Use transit, consider transit, use and consider and use transit.
Yep.
Got it. I think so. New heading, future communications bullets, discuss the benefits of projects like these on climate change, and consider marketing that helps people consider and use transit. Might as well capture it now so you don't forget later, right?
Are there, so I appreciate everybody that has shared feedback. Does anybody else have additional comments they feel like things that need to be added or that we maybe didn't capture correctly from our last meeting? I'm glad that we made adjustments, so that's good news.
Hey, Sophia, could you bump it up a few or zoom in a bit?
Where,
The
where
document. Couple more. I'm not sure everybody can see it well.
depends on how big you have it on the screen.
I have it full size and I've got a big monitor. There we go. Better. Hopefully.
And I know I've tried to read every change that we've made, and we will send this out for reference as well, so folks have we don't have all the changes memorized, that you have it as well. And Jean and Jason also need it for CMC. It'll go in the CMC packet as well. They will have it with as part of their materials. Should we, Jean, was your hand up just from before? You're good.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, hearing quiet, I think we have a document. Jean claps. Okay, I'll take that as that. It was a consensus document. That was the whole point. So it feels like we have consensus from the committee members present on what we're bringing forward. Thumbs up. Okay.
We're getting
cool.
thumbs up. Yeah.
I will stop sharing. Well, like I said, I'll get this out to the committees to have it and get to the CMC as well. The BAC might be a follow-up email to CMC, but I think we might be able to sneak this into what Dawn is going to send out to the CMC in the morning. Kind of next up for the committee is just our July meeting. And that date. And it is like the week of 4th of July. And I know a lot of folks tend to be gone that week or surrounding it. So there's just kind of a gauge of whether folks think that would actually be a good day to meet, or if we should potentially look at the second week in July. This will be kind of, I see a 2 from Jean. It'll be also an important meeting because it'll be assuming that we get approval from our respective bodies in this process. This committee has reached the end of the charter and the work that you set out and committed to, and so we would be starting the process basically as soon as we get full approval of the route, to re-seek appointments to the committee itself. So, kind of that whole process of where everybody has to apply to the whatever various means they were appointed. So some folks got appointed from municipalities, some got appointed from the park board, some got appointed directly from Met Council and Hennepin County. We would again have an application form like we did before. But before we do that, we do want to get this committee together. One, to thank you for your commitment to this project over the last 18 months, as well as this meeting tonight didn't really include anything about anti-displacement. And so kind of having an end meeting that would focus on an update on anti-displacement and kind of a furthering of that conversation. Kira is putting together a lot of super amazing work. And I'm sure the anti-displacement working group is going to have a really awesome discussion this Saturday. And so bringing forward what that group is talking about to the CAC in July would be the idea. So just kind of want to let folks know what to expect, and also make sure that our potentially, well, I hope all of you continue to serve on on this committee. I hope all the faces return, but if not, we definitely want you there to kind of be able to say thank you. And usually we have food and things like that. If we're still virtual, I'll think about how to do thank yous virtually. I'll take any ideas as well. Maybe maybe it can mail you something, like a I don't know what, pins or something. So I'll take ideas of how we could also, with limited government money, recognize maybe twins twins tickets. Free ride passes. I could do that.
Yeah,
maybe.
there you go. Metro Transit passes. That's what I was going to say.
Okay, how about that? something along those lines.
Well, do we want to decide on? It sounds like there is a few people at least that are saying the 13th works better. The second Wednesday. So, do we want to do that and then try in person, or does anybody? Can we get like any additional thumbs up? Because I mean, the 13th works better for me. It sounds like for Adam, Ellis, additional. Anybody else that the 13th would be okay?
And maybe given, how about whether we're in person and virtual, just as given COVID safety overall and where numbers are, because if numbers are still high in the next month, maybe we'll take that more cautiously. Whereas if things are in a good place, then it might be more doable. It's our organization is not. For advisory committees, we have to pick if they're virtual or in person. We unfortunately can't do hybrid as the kind of overall arching organizational direction. So I can't it has to be consistent, I guess, across the council. So I didn't know if that applied to us the last time we talked, but it does. So that's why we can't do we have to pick one or the other. And some folks can only make part of the meeting on the 13th. Would it, I guess, is it better, anybody that would prefer the 6th, just trying to get a feel of where we would have the better attendance? Kind of agnostic? Okay.
Be honest, if it's better on the 6th, then let us know. There's no reaction, so we'll assume the 13th, and then I guess we'll get more communication if we decide, like as of now, virtual. If we get other information, then we'll update it to do in person.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ellis.
No, meant to hit thumbs up.
Oh. Oh, it was the
Still
high
enjoying my
five,
youth.
wasn't it? It was the high five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe you guys thought that was a hand raised. How lame.
I'm not with the times apparently. Well, okay. Anything else? Anything else?
One quick question: can we attend? So there is the anti-displacement work group is happening. Like the work session is happening this Saturday, and I think we can attend if we want, right? Or no?
So the much of the committee is meeting in person, based so that they can focus on their discussion, and also because of kind of being cautious about COVID. All of you are welcome. The meeting will be streamed virtually, and you can basically watch the whole thing virtually. So you will be watching people that are kind of in person, but the whole afternoon is accessible to you. We will do two things as well. One is we'll have kind of like a note taker that will do kind of like long notes to summarize kind of what happened in the meeting in case you don't want to spend all of your Saturday listening in. And then as well as we'll kind of put out a communication more broadly on our Gov delivery that has kind of like a shorter version, really the highlights. But we will definitely communicate to this committee either way what happens at that 4th meeting. And then in July, Terrence will come and basically give you a full update as well as go more into the research that they'll be sharing. So we encourage you to listen in. Kathy turned on her camera to strengthen that message. Just know we're committed to making sure you're aware of the conversation, because part of that scope is to let you guys all know and get your feedback as well, as that process goes forward.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Sorry, now I feel like the nerdy kid that was like, we were done with the meeting and Jason kept talking, and then it took longer.
No, I just want to thank everybody for both the very productive discussion and feedback that we've had over the last couple meetings, and all the time that you've given us, and we'll say that again next time, because we've really appreciated this group. Oh, and Kathy wants to add something. Oh no, that's a high five. It's a high five. I got it. I got it. So anyways, okay, folks. Thanks again, and have a wonderful evening. And